All right, let's pull back the curtain on a little piece of internet magic. It's something you use every single day, but you've probably never even heard its name. It's the secret sauce that makes your favorite websites and streaming services feel like they're right next door, even when their servers are on a different continent. It's called Anycast, and it's the invisible trick that makes the modern internet feel so incredibly fast. So let's dive in and see how it all works. Seriously, think about that for a second. You click on a website that's hosted in, I don't know, Tokyo, but you're sitting in Toronto and it just appears instantly. How is that even possible? Is data somehow breaking the laws of physics? Well, no, not exactly, but it is using a trick that's almost as cool. So let's get into it. It's time to reveal the magic. In this first part, we're going to uncover the core idea that makes this global speed possible. It's a concept that has totally shaped the internet as we know it. And the answer is Anycast. Now, the official definition sounds pretty technical and, let's be honest, a little boring. It's a method where one single IP address is shared by a whole bunch of different servers, all spread out across the globe. But what does that actually mean? This is the absolute best way to picture it. Imagine a huge company with just one 1-800 number. When you call that number from New York, you get the call center in New York. When your friend in London calls the exact same number, they get the call center in London. It's one number, but many destinations, and you always get the one closest to you. Anycast is literally that, but for your internet traffic. Okay, so if it's one address, how does the internet know which call center, or in this case, which server, to send your request to? Let's break down the mechanics of how this whole one address, many destinations system really works. To really get it, you have to know how things used to be. The old way was called unicast, and with unicast, one IP address meant one and only one physical server. So if that server was in Tokyo and you were in Paris, tough luck. Your data had to make that long trip all the way to Tokyo and back. Anycast completely flips the script. It says one IP address can lead you to the nearest of many identical servers. It's a game changer. So here's how that choice gets made. When you send a request, the big routers that make up the internet's backbone see that the IP address you want is being advertised from lots of different places at once. They use a system called the Border Gateway Protocol, or BGP. You can think of BGP as the internet's GPS, or traffic cop. It looks at all the possible routes and just picks the shortest one, the path of least resistance. And boom, your request lands at the server that's geographically closest to you. What's really wild is that Anycast isn't some newfangled invention. The idea has actually been around since 1989. It got officially written down as an internet standard way back in '93, and by the early 2000s, it was already being used to protect the most important critical parts of the internet. So yeah, this is a very mature, battle-tested technology. All right, so we've talked about how it works. Now let's get to the really cool part. What does this unsung hero actually do for you and me every single day? It really boils down to three massive jobs. First, it makes the internet's phone book, the DNS, way faster. Second, it's the magic behind content delivery networks, or CDNs, that bring you streaming videos and websites so quickly. And third, and this is super clever, it acts as a built-in shield against a really nasty type of cyber attack. Let's start with DNS. You know, every time you type a website name into your browser, a DNS server has to look up its IP address. Well, the most important ones are the 13 root name servers. But here's the trick. Thanks to Anycast, there aren't just 13 physical servers. There are actually hundreds of them all over the world, all sharing those 13 addresses. So when your computer needs to look something up, it gets a super fast answer from a server that's practically in the neighborhood. And it's the exact same logic for streaming. When you binge watch a show or scroll through a site full of images, that content is almost certainly coming from a content delivery network. These CDNs use Anycast to store copies of that content on servers all around the world. So when you hit play, Anycast zips you over to the nearest copy. The result? Way less buffering, way faster load times.
But this might be its most brilliant job: security. Anycast acts as a giant distributed shield against something called a DDoS attack, or a distributed denial of service attack. That's basically when hackers try to flood a single server with so much junk traffic that it just gives up and goes offline.
And this chart really shows why Anycast is such a great defense. If you launch an attack on a single old-school unicast server, it gets hit with 100% of the force. It's almost guaranteed to go down. But if you attack an Anycast address, all that junk traffic gets distributed. It gets routed to all the different servers around the world, The attack is just diluted. Each server only has to deal with a small piece of it, and the service stays online for everyone. So at this point, Anycast sounds pretty perfect, right? It's faster, it's more resilient, it's more secure. But, you know, like with any technology, there are trade-offs. There are potential risks that engineers have had to figure out and solve over the years. This was the big worry in the early days. People asked, hey, what happens if the internet's routes shift while I'm in the middle of a big download? Could my connection suddenly jump from a server in Dallas to one in Miami? I mean, the Miami server would have no clue what's going on, and the connection would just break. And you know what? It was a totally valid concern. But it turned out that in the real world, it's just not an issue. This quote, which comes from decades of real-world data, shows that those kinds of breaks are incredibly, incredibly rare. We're talking less than 1 in 10,000. The internet's main pathways are actually pretty stable. Plus, modern systems have built-in safety nets. Every server in an Anycast network sends out this constant little heartbeat signal that basically says, hey, I'm here, I'm working. If a server suddenly fails for any reason, that heartbeat stops. The network routers see that instantly and just stop sending any traffic its way. It's a completely seamless, automatic failover. So what about those security trade-offs? Well, on the one hand, yeah, there's a risk of what's called packet hijacking, but that's managed with the same kind of careful security filtering that protects the rest of the internet anyway. And the huge, massive upside, as we saw, is that the network naturally soaks up DDoS attacks, which makes everything far more resilient. So when you add it all up, Anycast isn't just a clever trick. It's really one of the foundational pillars holding up the entire modern internet. It's this elegant solution that's always working silently in the background, solving the huge problems of speed, reliability, and security on a global scale. It really is one of the internet's great unsung heroes. And it kind of makes you wonder, right? What other brilliant, invisible systems are humming away out there, just keeping our digital world spinning? It's something to think about. Thanks so much for tuning in for this explainer.